FM, you're listening to the Cheryl Lacey Show, where curiosity meets courage. And joining us right now is our US correspondent, Lawrence Rogach, joining us once again to give us an update on what's happening around the United States. And today we're discussing particularly Iran. And if you're looking at the Australian headlines, you might have seen an article already saying, "Where's Greta and the celebrity protesters?" But Lawrence prefers to say, "Where have all the Democrats gone?" Lawrence, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you, and hello to all of your listeners.
There is so much, again, going on in the United States, never a dull moment with President Donald Trump. And we've had 15 days of protests now in Iran, and President Trump has just announced that all meetings are off with the officials because the protesters are being killed by the hundreds or thousands. And it appears that the Democrats have gone silent. What's happening?
Well, one thing, I would say the first thing that I notice is the stark lack of protests in the United States on our college campuses and our streets in favor of the people of Iran. The people who shouted "Free, Free Palestine" are not shouting "Free, Free Iran," apparently because they really don't care what happens to the people of Iran. They would rather tacitly support the Iranian government. Also, nobody apparently is paying them to support the people of Iran, as I suspect they were being paid to support the people of Gaza. Also, very interestingly, the people of Iran are calling on President Trump to rescue them. And anybody who calls on President Trump to help them is not going to get any sympathy from the left wing in the United States. So whether or not the left wants to free you depends on who's oppressing you, apparently.
And it seems, do you think that the term dictatorship, and particularly socialism on a looser term, is what's silencing the Democrats? If President Trump is going after a dictator, what's to say the rest of the world shouldn't be watching very carefully as to what might be happening to them, and particularly supporters within the United States?
Well, I've noticed that the left calls President Trump a dictator, but they don't oppose any of the other dictatorships in the world. Maduro of Venezuela was a dictator, but they were opposed to him being arrested. Iran is a dictatorship. They never protest against Iran. And all the other various dictatorships, such as Cuba, protest against them. So the left's concept of what constitutes a dictatorship seems to be very limited to one president who was elected democratically.
Do you think that the reason for that is that the Iranian people are speaking up and protesting against this submission that is a constant and has been a constant under this regime? And that is essentially the fear that people do not want this type of thing in what should have been and continue to be a free country, given its great success in the past?
The Iranian people were westernized prior to the revolution in 1979, in which the Ayatollah Khomeini was installed as dictator.
That's right.
And among the general population of Iran, they still, in their hearts, want to be free, and not ruled by religious police. Unfortunately, the power and the guns and the government are in the hands of the religious minority. The Iranian people are not Islamists. They're not radical Islamists. and they want to be free, and hopefully the Khomeini regime will fall, and we'll see a renaissance of Western values in Iran.
And to see that renaissance, the issue around, as you said, Islam and Muslims in that region, is that adding, do you think, to the issues in the United States, particularly with what we're hearing about so many of these politicians that are involved in corrupt behaviours and so forth? There's a whole interconnection of values and conflict over values, I suppose, that's going on, that's really coming to a head in the United States.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of Middle Eastern money, in particular from Qatar, that finances Islamism, anti-Israel, and anti-American sentiment in the United States. And this is amplified by the fact that President Trump is perceived to be an enemy of radical Islam, and the left will support anybody who's against President Trump, no matter who they are. So that I think is a great influence, and explains part of why the American left is allied with radical Islam. They both have the same enemy. And there's a famous Arab saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Even though, ironically, if radical Islam ever took over the United States, they would violently suppress the left because their values are totally different.
And you mentioned dictators before. Now, we've essentially got three superpowers around the world. We've got China, we have Russia, and we have the United States. You've also mentioned the Middle East. Would you consider them a superpower?
No.
Combined? Okay, so...
Israel... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Israel is the only superpower in the Middle East. Israel's neighbors are largely culturally backward, and their governments, for the most part, do not have the support of the majority of their people. For the most part, the Muslim people of the Middle East do not support their governments, and there's tremendous tension in the Arab countries between the secular people and the religious people. There's also tremendous tension between the Sunnis and the Shiites. If Israel did not exist, there would be a constant state of war between the various Muslim factions in the Middle East. Israel simply gives them a unifying enemy to focus on. So to answer your question, no, there are no Muslim superpowers.
Okay. That's
I think.
Indeed, thank you. And what I'm finding interesting, and this is locally for us, Lawrence, no doubt you would have heard that our ambassador to the United States has resigned a year earlier, Kevin Rudd, and that is big news here in Australia. And if you're not quite familiar with all of that, our ambassador was essentially embarrassed by President Trump because President Trump said, well, I don't like you. and so I think that was the beginning of the end for the ambassador. I don't know whether this has got anything to do with it, but suddenly our Prime Minister here in Australia is very much in favour of supporting the Iranian people, and that is quite a change of character with what we've been seeing the last couple of years, particularly with his silence over anti-Semitism. So there's certainly international events that are having local impact here in Australia. Is there something happening in the reverse in a very positive way towards President Trump with the actions he's taking?
I think that the majority of Americans are behind President Trump. The sense that I get is that 1/3 of the country is strongly behind him, 1/3 is strongly against him, and another third would just like to go about their lives being left alone and because they're sick of all the controversy. But in general, I think that if they were forced to choose, the majority would be backing President Trump. There's a temporary blip in that because of the shooting of that protester, Renee Good, and of course the media is full of distorted versions of what happened, and of course without an investigation being complete, we don't know exactly what happened, but it does appear, at least, that from the limited information available, that she was part of a planned protest, blocking traffic, refusing to move, taunting the officers, and then when she decided to drive away to escape being arrested, there was one ICE agent or officer who was standing in front of or kneeling in front of the car, who was the car at least brushed him as she was trying to speed away, and he opened fire. Now, here's an interesting fact that I looked up, which puts some additional color onto this issue. Minnesota has a statute that was signed into law by Governor Walz in 2020, and the statute says that in regard to law enforcement officers using deadly force, that the officer is entitled to use, in an emergency situation, to use his best judgment as to whether or not he was in danger of imminent harm or death, and he will not be judged in hindsight. Now, there's a lot of hindsight going on as to whether or not he was actually in danger, but with a car lurching towards him, who's to second guess that he didn't think that he was in danger? I think that at the very least, that law entitles him to the benefit of the doubt.
It's interesting, isn't it? That might be why the push for ICE to be held accountable, because federal law overrides state law, doesn't it? So it would be, well, let's just ignore what we put in that statute, just pretend it doesn't exist, and we'll handball the blame to ICE. And that's, essentially the way I'm hearing that. Would that be something you would agree with?
Yes, I think that ICE is going to get the benefit of the doubt. You already, it's already in the news about, the officer has been identified and he's getting all these death threats, which death threats are ironic considering that they're saying that he was in no danger.
Yeah, indeed.
No danger from the car, but he's in danger from
civilians
who think that he did wrong.
Indeed.
It's like you can't win.
No, indeed. Lawrence, it's been terrific to have you on the show again. There is always something that we learn that we don't hear in the media. And last week I recall asking you which media outlet we should be relying on to get to the truth of what's happening in the United States. And you kindly said, well, it may not be ideal, but Fox is the closest thing to the best bet. I suggest that you're the closest thing to the best bet here on 88.9 Win FM, and it's great to have you every week.
Thank you very much.
Right,
See you next week.
Speak to you next week. Thanks, Lawrence. Lawrence Rogek, our US correspondent, discussing Iran and what's taking place, or indeed what's not taking place in the United States with regard to looking after protesters and the Iranian community, who are desperate for responsible freedom. We'll be